Welcome to Mentors Collective. This one's going to be a crowd favorite because everyone watches TEDx, right? We all love TED Talks. We've been inspired by one or two in the past. I know I have. So on this episode, we're going to be talking TED, man. And I've got a good friend of mine who I've been talking to for a long time. An incredible speaker, an incredible coach, and an incredible kind of business advisor. And he's a multiple-time TED speaker. He is a powerful speaker. He does training. He does booking. He's a Division I athlete. He's a hip hop artist, a pastor, a best-selling author. Man, I can't say enough about this guy. So without further ado, I'm going to let him do a little intro as well. But welcome my friend Daryl Stinson, TEDx superstar.
Oh, that's a new one. What?
I just made it up too.
That's what I'm talking about. Hey, what's up, man? I'm excited because, TEDx, storytelling, it's so funny. I was talking to a guy that runs like a top podcast like you, and we were talking about storytelling and TEDx, and he keeps saying like, oh man, I know I got to get out there and tell my story more. Like his shoulders sink, his voice tone drops. You can read it in his body language that he's not like sold that story is the answer. And he doesn't see the business value in just telling better stories. He thinks he needs more staff, more operations, when the reality is that story creates a stronger vibrational pull in whatever you do. Because
TED's really unique, right? There's really nothing before TED that gave people a platform to get up there and really just deliver on everything that they've learned over the years and to empower the audience. TED's really been unique and special in that way. And I'm pumped to do my first TED Talk this year.
Let's go.
And obviously, you've done a couple. And you've been in the speaking world for a long time, man. So I would love to hear a little bit about kind of your intro, your segue into the speaking world and what that's been like.
Yeah, my segue into the speaking world, I knew since I was a child that I kind of had this sense, this pull, this gifting to be a communicator. I remember being like third grade, reading this book that was, everyone had to read it, participation learning. We did popcorn reading style. And we went to the silent reading portion. I remember reading this this novel that we were all going through and looking at it saying, I think I can do better. I'm in third grade. Like, who had the audacity as a third grader to think that? And I started and I wrote like a paragraph, and then I kind of ran out of creative mojo. And then I thought like maybe it was just a good idea, like how people think they can sing good until they actually open their mouth. And so I thought that was it. Fast forward, I doubled down on sports, played Division I, crashed and burned from an injury, went through a mental health crisis, and I'm happy to dig into any of that if you want to. But when I came out of that experience, I had to figure out what I was going to do to be successful other than sports. And since I'm an elite athlete and I already reached the 2% of an industry, I wanted to find something that I feel like I could be the best at. And, I looked inward, took a lot of courses, asked a lot of people, what's my natural talents, doing the survey thing, trying to see me, because it is hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. And I found that I had this seedling of a gift called public speaking and communication. And I say seedling because it was truly a seed. It was not a tree. It was terrible. I was nervous. I was so insecure to speak that I would literally leave the room during icebreakers so they would skip me and I wouldn't have to speak in front of people. I've spoken before with headphones in my ears to recite what I wrote because I was confident in my writing ability, but not my speaking ability. And that's the insecurities and the imperfections that I had to overcome to be able to tell my story and be who I am today. And so, when I started to just gain some traction in that and people started to be impacted by my story, I realized the impact that it was making on their lives and the process of becoming a great speaker, what it was doing inside of me. And that's why I fell in love with it.
It really is a beautiful thing. And it's something that not a lot of people have the ability to do. I mean, if you poll the public, I'm sure but do you know that the number one fear that they will say is public speaking? It's scary for most people. And, people think it just comes naturally once you see somebody do it. You see an expert in anything do anything, it looks easy.
Yeah.
But actually getting up in front of people, and we'll segue into this in a little bit, which is actually being vulnerable, but just getting up and looking a crowd in the eye and telling your story is frightening. It's frightening when I sit here on camera making YouTube videos. It's frightening when I do talks in a small setting. So how did you actually, did you always have that confidence? How did you develop that confidence to get on stage and deliver?
All right, we got to slow down a half a degree because what I'm getting ready to say will shift somebody if they catch it. Okay. I had to learn that the fear that I was feeling around public speaking was not really fear. It was excitement. And for a person who is so convinced from a mental standpoint that it was fear, no, I'm scared, I'm insecure, I suck, I'm not good, I get nervous, my palms get sweaty. It's almost like going to the doctor and getting the wrong diagnosis. You treat it wrong. So if it's my insecurity, what do I try to do? I try to work on my confidence. Like I put my shoulders higher and I raise my voice and I get better at my points and I hook story off for the audience. And the better I get at it, the more confident I become at it. Some of that's true. But the problem is that I didn't have a confidence issue. I had a competence issue. No clue what I was doing. And I didn't know how to articulate the fear that I was feeling was really excitement. If I really got past the insecurity, I was really so excited because I knew what I had to say could change someone who was in the exact situation that my information was going to help them get through. So that is a really subtle distinction, but it will help people to know that this fear that you face when you get in front of people, your palms getting sweaty, your heart racing, you blanking and forgetting a line is your body's natural pre-programmed response to your opportunity of a lifetime. And so I still sometimes blank. And it's because my adrenaline will get so hyped that I'll forget about like the content because I'm so like fast forwarding to the end. And so people can start to distinguish what is actually causing this fear so they have the right diagnosis and they can treat it correctly. That is going to help them to overcome that fear of public speaking while still learning the mechanics of it so that you get better at that skill.
And it's really kind of just like a mindset 180, right? It's like, it's not anxiety, it's excitement. It's not, my palms aren't sweating because I suck and because I'm scared. They're sweating because they're excitement. They're exciting. Is that something that you realized later on, maybe after you developed some competency, done a couple of talks, looking back at it? Or was that the mind shift that you needed to get on stage initially? Like you made that change and you were able to speak.
So I definitely failed forward a lot. I mentioned a story of when I remember speaking. This guy was a Hall of Fame athlete. He invited me to his program. His name is Brian Pruitt. His program's Power Dad. He invited me to come speak. And I was so nervous because there was other elite athletes and it was really a youth engagement for youth. And I wrote out the entire speech, recorded it on a recorder, stuck it in my pocket, wore a hoodie to the engagement because it was in a gym, and left one headphone in to give people the appearance that I forgot to take one headphone out. But really, I hit play and I started to recite the recording. The problem is that I speak a lot faster than I read. And so I got off sync with the recording and literally started to repeat the exact same sentences. It was so embarrassing. And the worst part about it was that my best friend was there and he was in the back dying, laughing at me. It was so terrible. And that right there, that failure was like an awakening for me. I'm doing this all wrong. This shouldn't be that hard. And so one of the things that led to the early transformation in my journey was I was working at Central Michigan University as a marketing professional, doing branding and PR there. And because I worked there, my compensation package, I got to take classes for free. So I went and took some public speaking classes and I got connected with this professor at CMU called Adam Barragato. He's now at Purdue University. The guy's a secret wizard when it comes to storytelling and public speaking. He was way ahead of his time. He was already using technology in an innovative way to teach students how to increase their communication ability. I became his teaching assistant and also went through his course material, and he helped to create a space for me to practice in safety. We would record videos for the students to go through and do exercises to become better speakers. Meanwhile, I was like, I need to learn and teach at the same time. So I'm getting basically private mentorship from him, and he's challenging me because he's completely free. He's like you, dude. I've seen your videos, like sliding across the table, swagger on 1,000, and I'm stiff. I'm not comfortable in my body. I haven't figured out how to articulate my sentences yet. And his freedom is pulling me to another level of freedom. So that's a great exercise for our listeners to try if they're like struggling. How do I break out of this shell? Get around someone who's more free than you. Their freedom, it's like when someone broke the first 4-minute mile, then everybody started breaking the 4-minute mile. Their breakthrough becomes yours. And so you are who you hang around really does help. And even if you don't have that circle, we have the internet. You can watch a speaker and try to emulate just so you can force yourself to be more expressive. Because once you push past that barrier, you won't have the limit of your insecurity anymore.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to segue to is like what exercises, what resources are available for people that want to speak? Because, man, so many people want to speak. I just came from a marketing conference and everyone's like, I want to be on stage.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is you could be the most successful guy in the room, but actually getting on stage takes a whole other skill set.
Absolutely. And mastery is a whole nother level. You know, so you're at a stage where I can tell and listen to you talk, you're doing podcast, you're great. But there's always another level of mastery. Kobe Bryant had another coach. Michael Jordan still had another coach. So there's always a new skill. And so when you ask me what drills, what exercises can people do, you know, one of it is like kind of what's the problem? Because the prescription will what the problem is will determine what the prescription I prescribe is. But I'll give you one place where I usually start people, because a lot of people have trouble kind of remembering. It's like, how do I get past this rehearsing? How do I remember my points without sounding too robotic or scripted? And I tell people this exercise. This one's gonna blow your mind. This one is not one that everyone teaches, but I stand by. And I've said this on Clubhouse in a room of a lot of people, and they were like, wait, what? Here we go. Brush your teeth. Look at your face.
I'm in. Tell me more.
You're like, what?
I just brushed my teeth.
It's a practice of mindfulness. When people speak and they start to get nervous, or they feel like there's a pressure to raise money because it's at a fundraising banquet or it's a toast and it's a special moment, our body starts to get nervous and we start to get into performance mode instead of presence. Performance versus presence. That's a good test, by the way. If you watch some of your old content, look at it and say, am I performing or am I present? Because when you're present, you are aligned and most connected with your audience. A performance brings them into a world they haven't experienced. A presence brings them into their current reality so that then you can bridge them from the performance dream world, from their present to the performance dream world. So they go from pain to pleasure island, right? So by brushing your teeth, thinking about nothing else but brushing your teeth, you will start to develop a sense of mindfulness and presence that can only come from focusing on one tooth at a time. And then when you do your speaking, you will find yourself being a lot more relaxed, a lot more present, and a lot more powerful, which is what we all want to become.
Interesting. And I think that a practice in mindfulness is essentially the takeaway here. And after your spiel, I'm probably going to stop brushing my teeth and watching TV at the same time.
Don't do
it. No, I won't do it.
Do the toothbrush and tell me how often your mind wanders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it's a great piece of advice. Mm-hmm. And it could probably be translated to a lot of other things in life, right? Like whatever you're doing, just focus on that and be mindful. Whether it be taking a walk and not listening to music, or tying your shoe, grooming I comb my dog, I watch TV. What if I just combed him? Just practicing that mindfulness is definitely a great hack. Mm-hmm. So remembering your lines, that's your key to remembering the lines, or that's something that people can do. Because I know that's one of the biggest fears with public speaking is, how am I going to remember a 20-minute talk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one way. Another way is the way in which you train. So some people try to memorize. They'll go through the notes. They try to memorize, and then they try to recite it so that they know it so well, so that it doesn't seem rehearsed.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for the majority of speakers who try to do it that way. What I like is aiming for understanding your content well enough so that you can freestyle within a framework.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to create a framework for your speech, one that's the most aligned with the truth.
And we're getting there.
Dramatic
we're getting
pause,
there, baby.
Dramatic. One that's most aligned with the truth. And then you want to practice freestyling within that framework. In other words, so I learned this tactic really from Bishop Jakes, which I learned a lot from him. He's one of the greatest communicators, in my opinion. Even if you disagree with his religious beliefs, his philosophy, if you look at his skill, he's brilliant. Okay.
Not sure who that is. I'll take a look.
He was trained preaching between stoplights. So they'd be at a stoplight, it'd be a green light, they'll give them a word, and you have to come up with a speech before you get to the next light. When you freestyle within a framework, take your headline, take your subpoint, take your story, take your illustration, look at it, and then go. Don't think about it. Don't overthink it. Let yourself flow. When you start to get used to freestyling the framework, what's going to happen is you're going to drop bars while you're freestyling that would have never came up if you were so focused on memorizing, reciting, or writing it perfectly. That's not even how you actually communicate. The goal is not to be witty, smart, or impressive. The goal is actually to be impactful. And the best way to be impactful is to be truthful and aligned and honest.
And vulnerable.
And so scripted stuff, rehearsed stuff, polished stuff, perfectly poised, said stuff doesn't always come off best. So that's why I like freestyling in the framework versus the memorizing techniques that sometimes they teach us in our schools.
And it's funny when you really see the masters, and we talked about mastery, guys like Tony Robbins who can get on stage and just talk for 8 hours and cry and change people's lives and scream. Man, I saw him several months back and I'm like, this is a fucking master. This is a master at communication. I have never been myself so energized and focused on a speaker for so long, on anything for so long. He just had a total mastery of emotion, of delivery. He cried a couple times. He made people in the audience cry a couple of times. And like, no doubt he didn't memorize 6 hours worth of speech. He knows his shit. He's connected, he's grounded, and he's practiced. He's a master. I don't even know how to contextualize going from here to there. It's vulnerability. It's a lot of it's truth. You mentioned truth. You can feel that coming from him. But let's talk a little bit about the vulnerability aspect, because that's something that I had never really seen before in a speaker before him. And yes, I have to a degree. You know, it definitely separates the great speakers from the good speakers. But how does a new speaker really connect with their truth, with their vulnerability, and then get the audience to connect with it as well?
Yeah. So let me tell you why I chose kind of vulnerability. It was, you know, with Brene Brown's work and just vulnerability being kind of a buzzword, it's more of a marketing ploy than it is really the true accurate word. The principle is that who you become in the process of doing the thing is far greater than doing the thing. Becoming a championship athlete is far greater than winning the championship. The process to becoming a great speaker is far greater than landing the biggest stage of your life. And vulnerability is one of the litmus tests for you becoming the best version of yourself to deliver the most powerful message, because vulnerability tests your authenticity. You ever walk past somebody at work or at a coffee shop? Hey, how you doing? Oh, fine. Doing all right.
Every day.
It wasn't the truth, and it wasn't the most vulnerable. And so when I'm telling people, when I'm working with speakers and they're telling me their stories and they're going through their speeches, what I'm looking for is how truthful are you being? How vulnerable are you being? Or are you in performance mode? Is this something that you're saying because it sounds good, you read it in the book and it works? Or is this something that you're saying because you believe it at the deepest level and you're connected with it so powerfully that you have a hero's journey story with it. You had a struggle with it. You wrestled with it. You had some insecurity around it. Like what's that vulnerable truth? And a lot of times what happens is because we, whether you live in America or not, a lot of people aspire to the American dream. And we're on this treadmill of performance, which is okay. I've ran on it too. And it's hard for us to be in touch with that vulnerable piece of ourselves because we kind of shut it down so that we can go perform for everybody and produce. When in reality, that is actually the most potent part of ourselves that we need to offer the world. That is our seed of greatness. It is you before you were rejected, before you were betrayed, before you had failure, before someone told you couldn't or shouldn't, or you can't because of where you came from or what you have or how you look. That innocent version of you is the most powerful. And if you don't believe me, take the best speaker, take Tony Robbins, take Lisa Nichols, take Les Brown, take Mel Robbins, like take whoever you want to take, your favorite speaker, take a old president, go get MLK, resurrect him from the dead, have him do a speech. And in the middle of, I have a dream, have a little child run across the stage and watch who captures the audience's attention. Whew. So here we are trying to show people, and listen, Jay, I am a former athlete. I am 6'5", 275 pounds.
Like, you're 6'5"?
Yeah,
I had
I'm
no idea.
I'm 6'5" and a half. If on the recruiting stat sheet, I'm 6'7". You know this, man.
Oh. I do. I was 6'3" on the recruiting sheet.
And what are you?
Really?
What are you? Really?
Almost 6'1".
Okay, yeah. So you know,
but I was a volleyball player.
Of
yeah, exactly. Man, I didn't know you're huge.
I'm huge. Yeah. And so I'm all for the macho. I played football, one of the toughest sports you could play. I played defensive end, one of the toughest positions you could play. So like, I'm not trying to lose the competitor's edge. What I'm saying is that it's not the most effective strategy. And when I tap into that vulnerable self, that childlike innocence, and I portray that person versus this strong 6'5" guy who I'm supposed to be, who has no weakness. What I do is I create a connection with the audience that's so strong, they'll follow me wherever I want to go. And there's a right way to do that. And there is, in my belief, a wrong way to do that. And the difference is just your intent. Are you doing it to manipulate an outcome that only serves you? Or are you doing it to make a true impact in the lives of other people?
Yeah, and you think you can tell the difference from watching a speaker. I'm sure you can. But how do you deliver in a different way? How does that change the delivery?
It dramatically changes the delivery because it changes what you're saying and how you're saying it.
Yeah.
Is that not all delivery is? What you say and how you say it? So have you ever, are you married? I'm sorry. Are you married?
Nope. I am single and my golden doodle is barking in the background.
All right. Well, I'll put myself on the mat. Okay. So I'm married. Okay. I'm married to a white woman, and I'm married to a boss white woman. She's an online business manager. She's got her master's degree. She's smart. So she don't, quote unquote, need me. She stands her ground. And when we get in arguments, I'm always right. I told her there's no point in going to counseling. The answer is going to be, I'm right. And so can you hear my humility? When we're arguing, I'm sharing my point of view, which is a form of public speaking. I'm persuading her to my point of view. When I am right, or I think that I'm right, but I'm actually wrong, and I come aware of that, it changes what I say and how I say it. I shift.
Probably in so many ways too. Body language.
So watch the shift in an argument. And remember, this is an interaction using story between two people. Watch the shift. One version is, what do you mean? This is what you should do. I've been telling you this. Look, it's so simple. If you would have read the book, Da 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 da. That's one example. The other one I realized that I'm wrong and I'm more vulnerable is, I was hurt because I really felt that the book was transformational. And you could have read the pages, sweetie, and we wouldn't be having this argument right now. But I know I shouldn't have got that angry. Do you think she's going to be more likely to read the book that I desire her to read the first way I did it or the second way?
Yeah, you're right. I never even thought of it that way.
Which way? The first or the second way?
I mean, obviously, the second way is going to be better in terms of communicating with your spouse or communicating with your girlfriend, whoever your significant other is. But in getting them to actually take action and connect with that message, also, like if you're trying to convince someone that you love to do something or to think a certain way, the second way is obviously much more powerful.
Yeah.
The vulnerable way.
And it works in business, and it's so powerful. It's why a Les Brown who doesn't, well, before he had millions of dollars, he has millions of dollars now. He's still not like the richest man on earth, but it's why a Google would hire him. Google has access to so many people. Why would they hire this guy that was a formal local government official just because he got vocal variety? It's because storytelling is that powerful, and it affects business results too. If you don't believe, I'll tell you another business example. So think about the business conversations you have in the exchange between two people, and doesn't it become like whoever's higher up on the ladder is the person who has the influence? If I have more employees, if I can I don't want to say outtalk you. If I have more money and more staff and more accolades than you, clearly I'm the top of this hierarchy, and I have the leverage in this relationship. And I respond, not if you know story. Because I don't have more than 5 employees, but I have clients and people who get coached by me who have 106. Why? Story.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think there's a big misconception in business, especially among men, right? That being vulnerable is a sign of weakness. And yeah, I'm sure you've heard this a couple times before too. No one wants to get up there and project their weakness and think that people are going to interpret them as weak. How do you get, some alpha male like yourself, the old 6'6" dude, to drop that?
The ego.
Yeah.
I call it the street cred. That's not worth the dime. I don't know how long I can keep up this strategy, but I'll tell you what I do now currently. I offer people the opportunity to fight me. I'm serious. It makes me that mad.
Someone who won't drop their...
It is such a distorted truth that somehow of me being vulnerable makes me weak. Do you understand that it takes more strength to be vulnerable than it does to be? You know how many dudes I know growing up in the streets that got cheated on by women and vulnerable and being like, that hurt me, and crying? They instead became a monster and a womanizer and an abuser or player, thinking that they were tougher, but really they weren't strong enough to communicate a feeling? A feeling? So you want to know what I would say to men who struggle with vulnerability because they think that means weakness and you have to be macho? I would say, okay, run up and fight me and prove that that's true. If my vulnerability and my willingness to share my weaknesses and cry because of my pain makes me weaker, then fight me and prove it. And since I'm 6'5", most people don't take the offer, and I can box a little bit. Now, I got to be careful which room I say that in. I don't say it to the elite athletes.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely be careful where you throw that offer around. Yeah. It's probably not the elite fighters you have to worry about.
It's probably anyone who's actually in shape that I have to worry about, because I'm not. So I look halfway the part because it's leftovers from football, but there's people still out here training that will just run laps around me, man, and knock my head off. So I don't want to get knocked out by a YouTube sensation. And I do have friends who are still professional fighters, NFL players, NBA players. So I try not to talk too much junk publicly like this. but too late. This is going to get out there. But if they're not an elite athlete, or if they are elite athlete, I use a different tactic, and I just address some of the emotions that I know that they're afraid to admit. Like, you're afraid to admit, like what you would do if you lost your contract, if you lost your business, how that would make you feel about you. You're afraid to admit that you have trouble being still because you really don't like being alone with yourself, because it forces you to face yourself and think about your thoughts. And if you're not afraid,
you know what you see.
If you're not afraid, then raise your hand right now and tell me one pain that you've had to overcome. And I'll do a real on-time intervention with people. And when they start trying to communicate their pain as if like they are completely over it, but you can tell verbally that they still are hurt and angry and bitter, I address it and I say, how do you really feel about that? Because anger is the masculine energy's default emotion when they feel uncomfortable and hurt. But it's not the right emotion. It is a symptom. It's not the source. The source is never really anger. It's usually pain, vulnerability. I remember the first time I told my wife, that hurt my feelings. I felt so feminine.
Did you cry too?
Not the first time. You know, that hurt my feelings. It's okay. I can still be a little boy and a grown man at the same time. That's what makes me dangerous.
Just a big baby.
Big teddy bear boy.
I love it. And you know what you see in common with all of these, like you said, master speakers, guys who are getting booked by the Googles at these biggest conferences, they usually come on and almost open with their vulnerability. They've learned it as a superpower in their talk to go in, lay it all out there, put out in front, and it connects with the audience immediately. Yeah. No matter what the story is, it's really an incredible thing that they're all doing in common. So there's something to it. Yeah. Getting in there and just all of the shit that you've went through, the places they've been, put it out, and it brings you down to a human level that the audience can connect with. Because just being on stage, you're already kind of superhuman. You're not at that human level. So it almost brings them down and lets the crowd say, okay, this is a person just like me. He's gone through things just like me. Right. And now I'm connected. Now I'm bought in. Now I'm listening. So if they're doing it, there's something to it.
Right. You're right.
It's pretty powerful.
It's extremely powerful. You're spot on.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit, because this is one of the main things people want to get out of this episode, why they're tuned in, where your expertise is, where we deal, and that's actually getting speaking gigs. And we can talk about TED specifically, but a lot of people want to be speakers. They think they're the shit. They think they've got what it takes. Maybe they do. Maybe they've spoken at a seminar or two, and now they want to get booked on a stage. Where do you go? Like, what are the options? Where do you even start?
Everything starts with clarifying your intent. Yeah. Why do you want to do it? And then when you figure out why you want to do it, you kind of reverse engineer it from them. 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders says begin with the end in mind. But tactically and pragmatically speaking, you have an expertise, usually a short way to communicate that expertise, a powerful story, sample, whether that is a true demo reel or it's something you recorded using an online software and it's just virtual. It's a sample of your ability to speak and hold an audience's attention, and a system to which to reach out and track that. So whether you do it in an Excel spreadsheet and you just, build your contact list and you shoot your email pitch, and then you make sure you have your follow-up systems in place and mark when, they said call them back, and you call them back. You can run it that way, or you can go get Speaker Flow, which is a great tool. There's all types of systems that you can use on a CRM standpoint to just, feed the beast with leads and, collect the ones that respond to you and book it. And when people talk to you on the phone, I always say it's better to be more interested than interesting. I learned it from David Meltzer, one of my mentors. A lot of people get on there and they try to pitch themselves instead of being more interested than interesting. And so if you're more interested in the event planner, the audience, the past speakers' success and failures. You develop a long-term relationship that leads to sustainable repeat business versus you impress them with your pitch, they hire you for 1 year, and then they go get the person with the next pitch the following year.
That's interesting. So what you need going into it, some kind of demo, right? You should record something, a preview of what you're going to deliver at that event. Of course, that's something that they'd be interested in seeing.
Yeah.
Any kind of resume? I mean, do they care what you've done, what you've accomplished? Do they care about your social reach? Are these things you should be taking into account?
Yeah. Is the proof in the pudding? Have you succeeded at the thing that you're speaking about? Or did you learn it and you're teaching it? Like, have you done it, or are you like the geek who's just teaching it? And there is a space for like the researchers, but it's usually around like, the tech spaces and the places that like they want to hear you present on your research findings. But it's different when you're trying to be like a person who like trains on story. Like, have you actually used storytelling to produce results? Have you actually, got media placements? Are you the real deal? Like, that's it. And the real deal doesn't mean do you have the biggest credentials for meeting planners. The real deal means, have you succeeded at the message you're going to stand in front of my audience and share? Yes or no? Is it clear and obvious? And it sounds so simple, man, but you'd be shocked, dude. Like, I ran a podcast that was probably half as good as yours. And I had so many people like show up so inauthentically trying to get a spot because they saw me bring on some big people. And it was just like, you would have did so much better if you were just yourself instead of trying to impress me, because this doesn't impress me. I'm not looking for the top person. If that's the case, I just ask some of these elite athletes I know to come on the show. Don't try to impress people with that. Only look for people who are looking for you.
Love that.
So here's the difference. When I train clients, so I gave you a systematic matrix way, but I'll tell you the way I train my private clients on how to book speaking engagements. Here's the difference. There's two ways. There's to run that machine, that CRM, plug it with more leads. It's all a numbers game. You can run a large multi-million-dollar speaking business that way. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. I'm a married man with 3 kids. I couldn't do that if I wanted to. I'd burn the candle at both ends. So there's that way. 100 leads, convert 20% of them, got $1 million speaking business. Or you clarify your intent. You start with the end in mind. You figure out what you really want the impact you really want to make in the world. You identify the places you actually want to speak. You make 4 phone calls and you book 3 speaking engagements. That's a reality because you're aligned. Because you're going to find the person who's looking for you versus spray and pray.
Yeah. Spray and pray probably works for agencies. I'm sure it works for individuals too. But if you're an individual and you want to book a speaking opportunity that matters to you, that's the way to do it. So one, you need to be credible. You need to be authentic. You need to have a demo. You need some kind of preview of what you're going to be delivering. Mm-hmm. And then a way to find them and get in touch with them, which is relatively, how do you find these speaking opportunities and get in touch with them? Tools like SpeakerFlow, which I have used, is a great tool.
It's a great tool. Speaker Intel is another great tool. It's an overlay tool that goes on Google, helps you search. If you got Google alerts set up, you can set them up to say call for speakers or call for presentations. If anyone around the world puts that on there, Google will send you an alert. Also put one for your name if you don't have a Google alert set for your name. Just because you want to see, like, if you get featured in something that you didn't know you got featured in, like, don't ignore that because it's not like, Forbes magazine or something. Like, that little local, regional magazine or whatever, or newspaper that wrote an article and your name popped up on Google has a viewership or a readership or a subscription base of a lot of people. And so you want to follow that breadcrumb. Remember, look for people who are looking for you. And this is how you can do it with 4 phone calls versus 400 emails. So that is how I kind of lost my train of thought towards the end, but I know what I said was helpful. So
no, golden nuggets. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Some final questions here, Daryl. Who is your favorite speaker and why?
Holy cow. That's not fair. I've got so many.
You can give me a couple and tell me what makes them different.
I actually did a training called The Best of the Best, and I list. I think I either did the top 7 or top 10. Who did I put?
There's so many
1?
styles, right? It's crazy how many different styles are out there. Like
so
Les Brown versus Tony Robbins. It's crazy.
Oh, it's so hard. The criteria of me deeming them the best speaker is what? Like just overall, pound for pound.
You don't have to say they're the best speaker, but your favorite speaker, the speaker that you greatest idolize.
Okay. I'm gonna give you 2 because it's cheap. Oh, I got 7. But anyways, one is one that not a lot of people know. It's my pastor. His name's Travis Hall. It's because of the impact his speaking has made in my life, not just from a religious standpoint, but he is a really good communicator and a leadership expert, and has helped me to understand identity and leadership in a way that even, and this is a strong statement, me being a certified John Maxwell coach has not brought me. So that's the depth of his well. And the second one, and it is another pastor, but it's TD Jakes, and it's because when I watch him, it's almost like when I would see these, 6'8" guys dunking out the gym and be like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. I went to a conference. Bishop Jakes did a whole sermon. I mean, it felt like the most fun roller coaster ride you've ever been on. And at the end, he timed it up with a real lion roaring into a microphone. Like, that takes sauce. And so it's like that bar is just like the top. Like, that's the Hall of Fame level to be able to communicate that way. And if I had to find a weird counter equal that people are surprised by, because I just gave you 2 pastors, it's Seth Godin.
Very interesting.
Speak in person in Detroit, and my mouth was on the floor the entire time.
That's an unassuming one that I wouldn't have guessed, but I love it.
He is brilliant communicator, especially if you want to watch somebody who does visuals right. He's the example, in my opinion. Visuals, the example.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the premier marketing geniuses of probably his time, not our time.
Yeah,
but really an incredible list. Mm-hmm. I'll check out these pastors. I've never seen either of them speak. The lion thing looks wild. I hope that's on YouTube somewhere.
It probably is. If not, I got the DVD.
Yes,
I bought
it. Send it to me.
Holy crap, dude! Crushed it.
Yeah. I mean, when you see an expert in anything deliver something that changes your life in front of your eyes, I mean, that's something that you don't forget. So that's pretty incredible.
Right.
Final questions here. Any books or learning resources that you think are go-to, need to reads, need to consumes for everyone listening to the show as it pertains to speaking?
Tons.
I got 7.
Okay. No, because I mean, if I turn this camera around, you'd see my bookshelf, and it's crazy. And then I've got a garage full of them. Highly believe in developing yourself, investing in yourself. Learn from everybody. You can learn anything from anybody. Learn from everybody. Public speaking. So first ones that come to mind, you got to get Jane. If you want to build a business, you have to get Jane Atkinson's Wealthy Speaker 2.0. It's the most solid, proven, time tested, in my opinion, business building public speaking book ever. This one's different. It's more about writing than it is about speaking, but communication is communication. Bird by Anne Lamott. Every writer, it's a mandatory read. Every speaker, I would say the same. And you have to read Joseph Campbell's A Hero with 1,000 Faces. It's just the classic. It's like, can't be a movie geek and never see Star Wars. So Joseph Campbell's A Hero with 1,000 Faces is like the hero's journey on steroids, and it'll keep you developing for a long time. It's one of those books you've got to read like 3 times.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful, brother. I'll add those to my list as well. I haven't picked up any of those.
Oh, dude.
I'm also
I've got plenty more. I've got at least like 40 more.
When I'm done with these 3, we'll let you know.
All right,
we'll start on the next 3. Daryl, for everyone who loved hearing us have this conversation, wants to hear more from you, follow your journey, where's the best place to do that?
Just hit me up on Instagram at Stinson Speaks. Reach out, shoot the DMs, and I'll be happy to connect.
All right, Daryl, always a pleasure. Thank you for spending some time with me, with my audience, digging into this. I'm excited for my speaking journey over this next year, and I'm excited to be working with you long term. And thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your time. I'll see you in the next one.
Appreciate it.